The silence of the Frostfang Pack's Omega quarters was a living thing. It wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of being forgotten, the quiet hum of a place where hope came to die. My name is Alara, and I am, or was, the lowest of the low. An Omega without a family line, without strength, without a single howl to my name. I used to think the worst sound in the world was the snarl of an alpha. I was wrong. The worst sound is the absence of your own voice, swallowed by years of being told you are nothing. Tonight was the blood moon ascension, the night our alpha, Kalen, a giant of a Lycan whose very shadow commanded armies, would choose his Luna. The air in the great hall was thick with pheromones, ambition, and the cloying scent of night-blooming jasmine worn by the eligible she-wolves. I wasn't there to be chosen. I was there to serve. My wrists ached from carrying heavy platters of spiced meat, my eyes downcast, a ghost weaving through the vibrant, howling celebration. I saw him then, Kalen, on his throne of ancient stone and wolf pelts. He was more a force of nature than a man, his gaze like shards of glacial ice scanning the crowd. For a heartbeat, a foolish, traitorous heartbeat, I let my eyes meet his. It was a mistake. His gaze stopped on me, not with curiosity, but with a kind of cold, dismissive recognition. The hall fell silent as he raised a hand. His voice, when it came, didn't boom. It cut, clean and sharp, a knife made of frost. You there, the Omega, yes, you. The one who smells of rainwater and defeat. Bring me the chalice. My feet moved, numb. The crowd parted, a sea of smirks and pitying glances. I took the sacred silver chalice from the elder and approached the dais, my heart a frantic bird against my ribs. I held it up, my arms trembling not from the weight but from the crushing pressure of his attention. He took it, his fingers not brushing mine. He drained it, his eyes never leaving my face. Then he spoke again, and his words etched themselves into my soul with the cruelty of cold iron. This is what we have become, his voice echoed in the utter stillness, that our Omegas are so weak they tremble at the sight of their own alpha. A Luna must be a fortress, not a fading echo. You are a reminder of the frailty I will purge from this pack. Leave this hall. Your presence offends the moon. The rejection wasn't just personal. It was a public execution of my already dead standing. A hot shame, then a cold clarity washed over me. The trembling stopped. I lowered my empty hands. I did not bow. I simply turned and walked, each step away from that dais feeling heavier and then lighter than the last. The whispers followed me like gnats, but I heard only the sound of something breaking inside me. It wasn't my spirit. It was a chain. I walked past the hall, past the barracks, past the boundary markers of the Frostfang territory. I didn't stop. The forest, dark and dense and whispering with ancient secrets, swallowed me whole. The further I went, the more I felt it, not fear. A strange, quiet pull, like a thread in my chest, taut and humming, leading me away from everything I had ever known. Kalen thought he was purging weakness, but as the cold night air filled my lungs for the first time without the scent of pack judgment, I wondered if he had just unleashed something the legends had long forgotten. And deep in the heart of the forbidden woods, under the bloody gaze of the moon, the earth itself seemed to sigh in recognition. The forest was a different world. In Frostfang, every tree, every stream was accounted for, owned, controlled. Here, life ruled in untamed chaos. The scent of pine sap, rich loam, and unknown flowers was overwhelming. For hours I just walked, driven by an instinct I couldn't name, the chill of Kalen's words still clinging to my skin like frost. I was nobody's Omega here. I was just a girl, alone in the dark. Exhaustion finally dragged at my bones as heavy as any platter. I found a small clearing where a great oak had fallen, its massive roots creating a natural hollow. It smelled of decay and safety. I curled into it, shivering, my thin servant's dress no match for the night dew. Sleep was a fitful thing, filled with images of icy eyes and echoing laughter. I was jolted awake not by a sound but by a feeling, a presence, vast, old, and deeply watchful. My eyes snapped open. Dawn was just filtering through the canopy, painting the world in shades of silver and green. And there, at the edge of the clearing, stood a wolf, but it was like no pack wolf I had ever seen. It was silvery white, its fur seeming to hold the dawn light within it. Its eyes were not the gold or blue of shifters, but a profound, gentle amber. It looked at me and I felt seen, not judged, not measured for strength, simply seen. "Hello, little one," a voice murmured in my mind, not as a sound, but as a feeling of calm. "Do not be afraid." I should have been terrified, but a profound peace settled over me. "Who are you?" I thought back, the mental speech clumsy and unfamiliar. "I am the guardian of these woods, the heart of this land. You have walked a long way from the world of teeth and titles." Its gaze felt like it could see all the way down to the shattered pieces inside me. "I have nowhere else to go." The thought was thick with a sorrow I hadn't allowed myself to feel. "You have come home," the wolf sent, its meaning warm as sunlight. "This forest has waited for a true heart, the packs have forgotten." They build their strength on hierarchy and fear, but the first magic, the deep magic, was of connection, of spirit. "Come." The wolf turned and paced slowly into the trees. I followed, compelled not by force but by a longing I couldn't deny. It led me to a place that stole my breath, a hidden glen where a crystal-clear spring bubbled up from mossy stones. The air shimmered with a tangible energy, and ancient, rune-carved stones stood in a circle around the water. "This is a spirit spring," the guardian communicated, settling on its haunches, "a place of the old power. The packs call these places myths. They have closed their senses to everything but their own might. Kneel by the water, Alara." I startled at hearing my name. "How do you kneel?" "See what has been buried, not by fate but by design." With a trembling heart I knelt on the soft moss. The guardian's amber eyes glowed. "Look into the water, not at your reflection, look through it." I leaned over the spring. My own face, pale and weary, looked back. Then the water stilled, becoming mirror-perfect. My reflection shifted. A soft silver light began to emanate from my image's chest. Then around it I saw not the forest, but a vast, starry sky contained within the water. Constellations I didn't recognize swirled, and at the center, a brilliant white wolf howled silently, its form made of nebulae and moonlight. "What is that?" I whispered aloud, my voice raspy. "That is your spirit, little one. Not your wolf, for you are not merely a shifter. You are a starcled, a bridge between the earthly pack and the celestial guides. Your ancestors sealed this power away, fearing it when the packs turned to the harsh law of the Fang. Your weakness was the seal holding this power dormant. The Alpha's rejection, it cracked the seal." The guardian's mental voice was grave. "The Frostfang Alpha seeks strength in dominance. He will soon learn that in breaking you, he has awakened the one thing that can either save his pack from the darkness gathering at its borders or utterly unmake his world." I stared at the vision in the water, my true self howling at a moon made of stars. Fear was gone. In its place was a terrifying, exhilarating sense of purpose. Kalen rejected an Omega, but what would he do when the Starcled returned? Days blurred into a rhythm set by the forest and the guardian's gentle guidance. My home became the sacred glen. The spirit spring's water was more than drink. It was clarity, each sip washing away another layer of the Frostfang dust from my soul. The guardian, who I now called Silas in my mind, began my true education. We started with stillness. "Alara, feel the root beneath you, not just the tree's root, but the root of the world. The deep, slow pulse, breathe with it." I would sit for hours, my hands pressed to the earth, learning to listen. It was the opposite of everything the pack valued. They prized explosive speed, crushing strength. This was about receiving, not taking. Then came the whispers, not from Silas but from the forest itself. The sigh of the wind through the firs held meaning. The chattering of a squirrel was a message about a passing patrol. The very sap in the trees seemed to hum with a low, resonant song. "Your connection is not to dominate the wild, but to converse with it," Silas impressed upon me. "The packs have forgotten this language. They shout, you must learn to hear the whispers." One afternoon, as I practiced attuning my senses, a sharp, discordant note sliced through the forest symphony. A scent carried on the breeze metal, sweat, and aggressive pine. Frostfang patrol. My old fear surged, cold and instinctive. I flattened myself behind the fallen oak, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I saw them, 3 warriors, moving with arrogant grace through the undergrowth. Kalen's best. One of them, a hulking brute named Rykar, paused, sniffing the air. His eyes narrowed. He took a step toward my hiding place, every muscle in my body locked. He was 10 paces away. 5. Then, a gentle nudge in my mind from Sila's. Speak to the forest, Alara. Ask for aid, do not command, request. It was madness, but I had no other choice. I closed my eyes, pushing past the terror. I sent a desperate, silent plea into the earth, into the air, into the very life around me. Help me, please hide me. For a second, nothing. Then, a subtle shift. A gentle breeze stirred, blowing directly from me toward Rykar, carrying my scent away into the canopy. A nearby thicket of thorny bramble seemed to tremble, then released a cloud of sweet-scented pollen that confused the air. A woodpecker high above chose that moment to begin a loud, rhythmic drumming, masking the sound of my breathing. Rykar stopped, sniffed again, shook his head, and grunted to his companions. Nothing, just the wind playing tricks. This far into the deadwoods, nothing but ghosts and rabbits. They moved on, crashing away through the brush. I sank to the ground, trembling not with fear but with awe. I had hidden not by my own power but by the forest's consent. The lesson was seared into me. My strength was not a weapon in my hand. It was the loyalty of the world around me. That night, as I sat by the spring, a new vision came unbidden in the water, not of stars but of the Frostfang territory. I saw the great hall, but the stone looked sickly, the banners tattered. I saw Kalen on his throne, but his form was shadowed, his head bowed as if under a great weight. And at the borders of the territory, creeping in like a foul mist, was a darkness that blotted out the trees, a darkness that felt hungry, intelligent, and utterly cold. I gasped, pulling back. Silas's amber eyes met mine in the moonlight. You see, the decay is not just spiritual. A blight gathers. It feeds on pride, on division, on the cracks he himself made. Your pack is in grave danger, Alara. The thought should have brought satisfaction. Let the proud alpha face his consequences, but it didn't. I felt a deep, echoing ache. They were still my pack. The she-wolves who had secretly shared bread with me, the elderly warriors who told stories by the fire, even the arrogant ones like Rykar, they were part of a whole that was dying. Kalen's rejection had exiled me, but it had not severed that deeper tie. What do I do? I asked Silas, my mental voice small. You must grow stronger. You must learn to wield not just the forest's help, but the light within you, the starkled gift, the darkness fears that light above all else. The next morning, Silas led me to the center of the stone circle. Today we do not listen, today we remember. Close your eyes, Alara, and remember the stars you saw in the water. I closed my eyes, reaching for that image of the cosmic wolf. At first there was only darkness behind my eyelids, then a pinprick of silver light, then another. I focused, breathing with the root of the world. The lights grew, swirling, connecting. A warmth began in my chest, unfamiliar and potent. It wasn't the fierce heat of a shift. It was a cool, silver warmth like moonlight made liquid. Hold it, let it fill you. Do not fear it, it is you. The warmth spread through my limbs, tingling in my fingertips. When I opened my eyes, I gasped. A soft, silvery luminescence, faint as starlight, clung to my skin. I held up my hand and the light followed, dancing along my palm. For the first time in my life, I did not feel weak. I felt aligned, I felt true, and I knew, with a certainty that shook me to my core, that the path ahead led back to the very place that had cast me out. The Frostfang pack needed a savior, and their Giant Lycan King was going to get one he never saw coming. The vision of the creeping darkness would not leave me. It painted the back of my thoughts, a grim tapestry of decay that played behind my eyes whenever I tried to rest. The peace of the glen was now underpinned by a relentless ticking clock. Silas sensed my unrest. One evening, as the first stars pricked the violet sky, he spoke into my mind, his usual calm edged with gravity. The blight moves faster than I foresaw. It is drawn to the fracture in the Frostfang's spirit, the fracture your alpha created. We must act. Fear, cold and slick, coiled in my stomach. Go back, now, I am not ready. I can barely summon a handful of starlight. You are ready in the only way that matters, he replied. Your heart knows the way. The old power is not about force, but alignment. You are aligned with the truth. They are not. That is your weapon, your shield. He nudged me toward the spring. Look again, see the now. I knelt, dread and resolve warring within me. The water showed not my reflection, but a bird's-eye view of the Frostfang borderlands. The healthy, deep green of the pine forest was now tinged with a sickly gray at the edges. Trees stood bare and twisted, as if winter had claimed them in high summer. And there, moving within the gray, were shapes, not wolves, not quite. They were shadows given form, with eyes that glowed a vacant, hungry yellow. Shadowkin, creatures of the blight, Silas confirmed, a growl underlying his mental voice. They gnaw at the borders of reality itself. They are the symptom. The source of the blight is deeper, a poison in the pack's heart. You must find it and cleanse it. But how? I am one Omega, you are the Starkled. You do not fight them with tooth and claw, you fight them with memory. With the memory of what the pack was meant to be, you must remind the land itself of its health. He taught me then, through the night, not combat but ritual. A way to weave the starlight within me with the song of the healthy forest, creating a barrier of pure, remembered life. It was exhausting, delicate work. I felt like I was trying to hold a symphony in my hands, each note a thread of light or a pulse of earth song. By dawn, I was trembling with effort, but a small, radiant orb of intertwined silver and green light hovered between my palms. It hummed with a potent, peaceful energy. This is a seed of remembrance, Silas said, pride warming his tone. Where the blight has touched, this seed can awaken the land's true nature. It will not destroy the Shadowkin, but it will make the ground beneath their feet reject them. It is a start. You must plant these seeds at the four corners of the Frostfang territory, starting with the east where the blight is thinnest. My journey back was a strange inversion of my flight. I moved with a purpose now, the forest itself easing my path, branches lifted. Streams calmed to provide clear crossing. I was no longer a fugitive, I was an emissary. It took a day to reach the eastern border. The change was palpable, the air grew thin and sour. The cheerful birdsong was replaced by an ominous silence. And then I saw it, the line where life ended. On one side, a vibrant fern, on the other, the same plant, gray, brittle, and crumbling to dust. My heart ached. Holding the seed of remembrance carefully, I approached the blight line. I could feel a malevolent awareness press against my senses, curious and hostile. I knelt, ignoring the cold dread seeping into my bones. Placing my hands on the blighted soil, I sent a pulse of my own connection into it, searching for any echo of the healthy land. It was like shouting into a deep, empty well. Nothing came back. Steadying myself, I pushed the luminous seed into the dead earth. For a moment, nothing, then a soft pulse. The silver-green light spread from the seed in delicate filaments like roots of pure energy. Where they touched, the gray receded, not with a dramatic flash, but with a slow, gentle sigh. A patch of healthy, dark soil about the size of my hand appeared. A single, brave blade of green grass pushed up. It was a tiny victory, impossibly small against the vast blight. But it was real, it was life fighting back. A screech shattered the silence. From the gray woods, two Shadowkin emerged. They were insubstantial, their forms wavering like heat haze, but their glowing yellow eyes and clawed hands were terrifyingly solid. They flowed toward me, driven by a mindless hunger for the light I had brought. My old Omega instincts screamed to run, to cower, but the starkled heart within me held firm. I rose, placing myself between the Shadowkin and the tiny patch of healed earth. I raised my hands not in aggression but in presentation. I let the starlight within me rise to the surface, not as a weapon, but as a beacon. I am Allura, I said, not aloud, but with every fiber of my being. I am of the pack and of the stars. This land is under my protection. The Shadowkin hesitated, hissing as my light touched them. It didn't burn them, but it confused them, repelled them. They were creatures of absence, and my presence was too full, too real. With one final, furious screech, they melted back into the gray woods. I stood there, breathing heavily, the light fading from my skin. I had faced the blight, I had held my ground, and I had healed, however little. But as I looked west, toward the heart of Frostfang territory, where the blight would be thickest, where Kalen ruled in his prideful isolation, a new fear took root. To heal the land, I would have to face the source of the poison. I would have to face him. And the tiny seed of light in my palm felt like the only candle against a coming storm. The eastern border was secured, a small circle of living green in a sea of gray, but it was a holding action, a whisper against a gathering scream. Silas's guidance in my mind was a constant, low hum now, a compass pointing toward the spreading sickness. The blight is a mirror, Allura. It reflects the inner sickness of the pack. To find its heart, you must walk where the pack's pain is deepest. That meant going back. Not to the Great Hall, but to the places I had known in my servitude, the training grounds, the elders' quarters, the silent moon grove where rituals were once held. I moved like a ghost through my old life. Using the forest's whispers, I avoided patrols with an ease that would have shocked my old self. The Frostfang territory felt smaller, colder. The vibrant, aggressive energy was now tinged with a brittle anxiety. Laughter was sharp and short, eyes darted. I saw Rykar, the warrior from the patrol, snapping at a younger wolf for a minor stumble. The cruelty was unchecked, fear masquerading as strength. My first stop was the Moon Grove, once a place of tranquil reflection under a permanent ring of glowing moonstones. It now felt abandoned. The stones were dim, their light choked by creeping gray vines that seemed to pulse with a slow, sick rhythm. The blight was here, physically present. Kneeling by the central altar stone, I placed my hands on it. Instead of the cool, calming energy it used to hold, I felt a deep, thrumming ache of neglect. Images flashed Kalen, turning away from a lunar ceremony, deeming it a distraction for the weak. Elders, their counsel ignored, fading into the background. The sacred was being forsaken for the martial. This was one source of the poison, severed tradition. Next, I crept to the edge of the training grounds, hidden in the scent of pine and forge smoke. I watched the warriors train. It was all brutal efficiency, takedowns and submission holds. There was no grace, no camaraderie in the dance. A young she-wolf, Lyra, was being relentlessly pounded into the dirt by a larger male. Her spirit was breaking in her eyes, and the trainers did nothing. A memory surfaced, my own training, where I was used as a living punching bag until I was deemed untrainable. The poison here was the crushing of potential, the worship of brute force over unique strength. Finally, drawn by a deep, resonant sorrow in the land song, I approached the howling caves. This was where wolves went to grieve, to pour their sorrow into the stone and let the echoes carry it away. The cave mouth, usually a place of respectful quiet, felt clogged. Inside, the air was thick with unshed tears. And there, scrawled on the wall in charcoal, were not ritual symbols, but angry, desperate words. He does not hear us. The Alpha is blind. The forest dies and he builds taller walls. The poison here was unheard grief, isolation at the very top. Kalen's rejection of me was not an isolated act. It was the symptom of a king who had rejected the heartbeat of his own kingdom. The pieces clicked together, forming a devastating picture. The blight was fed by Kalen's own choices, his rejection of the sacred, his disdain for the seemingly weak, his isolation from his pack's pain. He was the unwitting source. As I stood in the sorrowful dark of the cave, the final, most dangerous part of Silas's plan became clear. To plant the seed of remembrance at the blighted heart, I would have to go to the very core of Frostfang power. I would have to enter the Alpha's den, not as a supplicant, not as an Omega, but as a healer walking into the belly of the sickness. The risk was unimaginable. If I was caught, Kalen would see my newfound power not as salvation, but as a threat, a trick. He would crush me, and with me, the last hope for the land. Yet the land song here was a plea, a weak, dying thread I could not ignore. I fashioned a simple hooded cloak from fallen leaves and moss, using my connection to make it blend with the shadows. I would be just another shadow moving through the night. The Alpha's den was a cavern behind the great hall, reinforced with ironwood and guarded not just by warriors, but by Kalen's own formidable aura. As I slipped past the snoring guards, their senses dulled by the general malaise of the blight, I felt that aura like a physical pressure. It was a storm of pride, frustration, and a deep, unacknowledged loneliness. The cavern was sparse, lit by a single, large moonstone that was also clouded with gray veins, and there in the center, on a bed of furs, slept Kalen. In repose, the Giant Lycan King looked younger. The harsh lines of command were softened, but even in sleep a frown marred his brow. The air around him was thickest with the blight's scent. This was the epicenter. My hands trembled as I pulled the last and most potent seed from my pouch. This one glowed with my own starlight and the concentrated song of the healthy forest. I had to plant it here at his threshold where his energy met the earth. I crept forward, each step a lifetime. The silence was absolute. I was 5 paces from the entrance to his inner chamber. I knelt, my fingers searching for a crack in the stone floor. A floorboard creaked behind me. I froze. The pressure in the room spiked. A low, dangerous growl filled the air, vibrating in my chest. I turned slowly. Kalen was awake, not asleep on his furs, but standing in the doorway of his inner chamber, fully dressed, his eyes blazing with furious, icy blue light. He had not been sleeping. He had been waiting. The trap was not for the blight, it was for me. His voice, when it came, was a whip of controlled fury that shattered the silence. I knew a sickness had entered my territory. I felt its gentle, insidious touch, and now I find it has a face. His gaze swept over my hooded form, contempt dripping from every word. Did you think your little lights in the forest would go unnoticed, witch? The word witch hung in the air between us, charged with all the fear and superstition of 100 pack tales. I slowly rose to my feet, my back straight, the seed of remembrance clutched hidden in my palm. The urge to shrink, to grovel, was an old ghost I forcibly silenced. I am no witch, Alpha Kalen, I said, my voice steady, though it felt unfamiliar in this space. It was my own voice, not the whisper of an Omega. He took a step forward, his immense frame filling the cavern entrance. The clouded moonstone cast jagged shadows across his face. You hide your scent with forest trickery, you skulk in the night. You spread some strange magic on my borders, you deny you are a poison. His anger was a blizzard, but beneath it I heard it, the ragged edge of a leader who was losing control and could not understand why. The poison was already here, I said, meeting his gaze. I let my hood fall back, the dim light caught my face. His eyes, those glacial chips, widened a fraction, a flicker of something, recognition, confusion before the ice reformed. You, the single syllable was flat, disbelieving, the Omega, Ilara. He said my name as if it were a foreign, distasteful object. You should be dead in the woods, or broken, not here. The woods do not break what the pack abandons, I replied, taking a small step forward. They remake it. A snarl twisted his lips. Into this, you think a faint glow makes you something. You are a defect that fled, now returning as a disease. His words were meant to lash and diminish, but they landed on the new truth inside me and shattered. He was still fighting the Omega. He couldn't see the starkled. The disease is the blight that graze your trees and silences your howling caves. I shot back, my own temper, long buried, flaring. It feeds on the grief you ignore, on the potential you crush, on the traditions you dismiss as weakness. I was shouting now, the truth pouring out of me. Your strength has become a wall, Kaelin, and you are walling your pack in with a rotting corpse of what it used to be. He moved. One moment he was across the chamber, the next he was before me, his hand of vice around my forearm. The shock of the contact was electric. His touch was not the brutal grip I expected. It was searingly hot, and for a split second I felt a jolt, not of pain but of a deep, resonant connection, like two discordant notes suddenly finding a harmony. It stunned us both. He recoiled as if burned, staring at his own hand, then at me, his breath coming in short, sharp gusts. What are you?" he whispered, the fury replaced by sheer, unadulterated shock. This was my chance. I opened my hand, revealing the seed of remembrance. It pulsed with a gentle, insistent light, bathing our faces in silver green. "I am the one trying to heal what you are too proud to see is sick." I knelt, ignoring his looming presence, and pressed the seed into a crevice at the base of the clouded moonstone. This is not a weapon, it is a memory of health. As the seed touched the stone, the gray veins within the moonstone began to recede, like ink drawing back from clean water. A pure, soft white light emanated from its core, pushing back the shadows in the chamber. Kaelin stumbled back, his hand coming up to shield his eyes, not from brightness but from the sheer, unfamiliar sensation of purity. The light washed over him, and I saw it. For the first time I saw the blight on him, not physical but a clinging, shadowy aura of isolation and crushing responsibility around his broad shoulders. The light did not attack it, but gently illuminated it, making it visible. He gasped, a raw, pained sound. He looked at his own hands as if seeing them for the first time. The angry lines on his face deepened into something else, horror. The chamber door burst open. Rykar and two other warriors stood there, weapons drawn by the light, and their alphas gasp. "Alpha," we heard, the Omega. "She attacks," Rykar roared, his eyes locking on me with murderous intent. He lunged. No, the command did not come from me, it came from Kaelin. His voice was not a roar, but a cracked, thunderous decree that froze Rykar mid-step. Kaelin stood between the warrior and me, his body a shield. He was still looking at his hands, at the retreating shadows in the light of the cleansing moonstone. When he turned his head to look at Rykar, his icy eyes were shattered, filled with a tumult of emotions I could barely name, anguish, dawning realization, and a fierce, protective confusion. He looked from his loyal, furious warrior to me, the glowing outcast at his feet. The foundation of his entire world had just been upended. His next words were not for Rykar, but for me, spoken in a voice rough with a regret so deep it shook the stone. "What have I done?" The silence in the wake of Kaelin's shattered question was thicker than the mountain stone around us. Rykar and the other warriors stood frozen, weapons half lowered, their faces a mask of confusion and distrust as they looked from their broken alpha to the glowing Omega he now shielded. The cleansed moonstone bathed the chamber in a soft, accusing light. I slowly rose, the pulse of the newly planted seed a steady rhythm under my feet. Kaelin did not look at me. His broad shoulders were slumped, his gaze fixed on the now luminous stone as if it were a portal to every mistake he'd ever made. The arrogant Giant Lycan King was gone. In his place stood a man confronting the ruins of his own philosophy. "Alpha," Rykar finally growled, the word more a question than a title. "This creature, she has bewitched the den, let us remove her." Kaelin's head snapped up. The anguish in his eyes hardened into a flicker of his old authority, but it was tempered now, uncertain. "You will touch her," he said, his voice low but carrying that undeniable alpha timbre, "and you will answer to me." The command was absolute. Rykar flinched as if struck. The other warriors exchanged stunned glances. An alpha protecting a disgraced Omega was beyond their understanding. It was beyond mine, too. I took a careful step back, putting more space between us all. She is no witch, Rykar, Kaelin continued, forcing the words out. She is a healer, and I have been blind. He finally turned his gaze to me. It was no longer icy dismissal, nor the furious shock from moments before. It was a look of raw, painful scrutiny. The blight, you speak true of it, it is fed by my rule. Every instinct told me to soften the blow, to let this powerful, wounded man down gently, but the land was dying. There was no room for gentle lies. Not your rule, I said, meeting his gaze squarely. The spirit of it, the isolation. The rejection of everything that did not fit your vision of pure strength. The land and the pack are one, Alpha. When you cripple one, you sicken the other. The shadowkin are just the fever. He absorbed this, each word landing like a physical blow. He looked at Rykar, the embodiment of the brutal strength he'd championed. He looked at the cleansed moonstone, symbol of the tradition he'd ignored. The evidence was irrefutable. What must be done? The question was not an order, it was a plea. It was the most vulnerable thing I had ever heard him utter. The power in the room subtly shifted. It was no longer his alone. I held a piece of it now, the knowledge he desperately lacked. The seeds of remembrance I've planted are a barrier. They slow the blight, heal small patches, but the source is the poisoned heart, the heartstone. His eyes widened. The heartstone was the legendary core of Frostfang power, a massive crystal deep in the mountain, said to be the literal heart of the territory. It was a myth to most, a ceremonial site for alphas. It is real, I asked, surprised. It is guarded, he said curtly, then his expression darkened further. Or it was. I have not performed the rites of binding since my father's time. I deemed them sentimental. The final piece of the tragedy clicked. The Alpha had abandoned the ritual that bound him to the health of the land. The Heartstone, unattended, had become a vessel for the pack's collective sickness. We must go there, I said, you and I. The Alpha and I faltered, not knowing what to call myself. The Starkled, Kaelin finished, the title feeling strange yet fitting on his tongue. He had heard it in my mind during that searing touch. He nodded, a decision solidifying in his eyes. Rykar, you will stand guard here. Tell no one of what you have seen. The fate of the pack rests on secrecy now. Alpha, you cannot go alone with her. It is a trap, Rykar protested. Kaelin's gaze hardened, the Alpha command surfacing fully. It is an order. The first of many you may not understand. Obey. The final word was a wave of force that made Rykar bow his head, teeth gritted in frustration. Kaelin turned to me. The path is treacherous and hidden. Can you follow without? He gestured vaguely, as if unsure of my abilities. Without glowing, I offered, a faint, humorless smile touching my lips. I can follow, and I can sense the blight's path now. It will lead us to the stone. He gave a sharp nod. Then we go now. He led me through a passage at the back of his chamber, one I never knew existed. The tunnel was narrow, hewn from living rock, descending deep into the mountain. The air grew cold, then oddly warm, then cold again. The further we went, the heavier the atmosphere became. It wasn't just the weight of the mountain, it was the weight of sorrow, of neglected duty. The blight's presence was a physical taste of ash in the back of my throat. We walked in silence for what felt like hours. The only sounds were our footsteps and the distant drip of water. The tension between us was a live wire. He was an Alpha forced to rely on the one he'd cast out. I was an Omega walking beside the king who'd shattered me. Yet that single moment of resonant contact hummed in the space between us, a confusing promise of something else entirely. Finally, the tunnel opened into a vast, breathtaking cavern. In its center, on a natural dais, stood the Heartstone. It was magnificent, a geode the size of a house. Its interior crystals should have been blazing with prismatic light. But they weren't. They were clouded, shot through with the same pulsing gray veins as the moonstone. A slow, sickly glow emanated from it, and the very air shimmered with distorted, painful memories, the scream of a fallen warrior, the sob of a rejected mate, the cold echo of my own banishment. This was the poisoned heart. And standing between us and it, formed from the coalescing gloom around the stone, were not just shadowkin. These were larger, more solid. Their eyes glowed not with vacant hunger, but with a cruel, mocking intelligence. Sentinels of the blight, they turned as one, their forms whispering against the crystal. Kalen shifted instantly, his clothes shredding as he erupted into his giant lichen form, a tower of midnight fur and muscle, his fangs bared in a silent snarl. He moved to place himself in front of me, a protective gesture that sent a strange pang through my heart. He looked back at my human form, his wolfish eyes urgent. He couldn't speak, but the message was clear: this is my fight. I shook my head, stepping up beside him, feeling the starlight rise within me. No, Kalen, I said, my voice echoing in the cavern. This is ours. You fight the symptom, I must heal the disease. The sentinels charged, and the cavern erupted into chaos. The world dissolved into a whirlwind of snarls, shadows, and shimmering light. Kalen met the charge of the lead sentinel with a crash that echoed like falling mountains. Claws of shadow met claws of obsidian-tipped bone. He was a tempest of brute force, his every move a lesson in devastating power, but the sentinel absorbed blows that would shatter stone, its form wavering and reforming. It was like fighting smoke. My own fight was different. Two smaller sentinels flowed toward me, their intent to separate me from the Heartstone. Fear was a luxury I couldn't afford. I closed my eyes for a heartbeat, found the root of the world beneath the blighted cavern floor, and pulled. Starlight erupted from my skin, not a weapon, but a proclamation. I am here, I am life. The sentinels hissed, recoiling. I didn't attack them. I moved toward the Heartstone, each step an effort against the crushing, sorrowful aura it emitted. I heard Kalen roar in pain. A glancing shadow claw had raked his flank, leaving a mark that smoked with decay. Rage, hot and fierce, flared in me, not for myself, but for him. The instinct to protect my alpha, an instinct I thought the pack had beaten out of me, surged forward unbidden. I flung a hand toward his foe, not to strike, but to illuminate. A cord of pure silver light shot from my palm, wrapping around the shadowy sentinel. It didn't burn, but it crystallized the shadow for a crucial second, making it solid. Kalen, sensing the shift, didn't hesitate. His massive jaws closed on the solidified form, and with a wrenching twist of his powerful neck, he shattered it into dissipating mist. Our eyes met across the chaos. His wolfish gaze held a spark of stunned gratitude. The connection flared again, stronger. I could feel his pain, his determined fury. He could feel my unwavering focus, my deep-rooted calm. We were two halves of a whole, operating in perfect, unspoken tandem. He became my shield, a whirlwind of fur and fury keeping the remaining sentinels at bay, creating a path for me. I became his light, revealing the weaknesses in our foes, healing the creeping decay his wounds with touches of cool starlight that made him shudder in relief. Together we were more than alpha and omega, more than warrior and healer. We were balance. I reached the dais. The sickly pulse of the Heartstone was a physical pressure against my chest, a dirge of a dying world. I placed both hands on the largest, most clouded crystal. The contact was agony. A torrent of poisoned memories flooded me, Kalen's cold rejection, yes, but also generations of alphas before him making similar choices, valuing might over mercy, stone over song. The blight was old. I screamed, but the sound was lost in the crystal's hum. I felt my light being swallowed by the vast, hungry grayness. I was failing. Then I felt a massive, warm presence at my back. Kalen, back in his human form, his chest heaving, blood and shadow stains on his skin, placed his hands over mine on the crystal. His touch was no longer a shock but an anchor. "I am here, Alara," he growled, his voice ragged with effort and emotion. Show me the truth. Through our joined touch, I didn't just show him, I guided him." Together our consciousness plunged into the heart of the sickness. We saw it all not as accusations, but as history, as cause and effect. He witnessed the moment his father scorned a peace-seeking elder, creating a rift. He felt the loneliness of his own coronation, where he shut out all comfort. He lived in a searing flash, my own banishment from my perspective, the crushing weight of his words, the death of hope. He didn't just see it, he felt it. His pain, his regret was a tidal wave, and in the center of that storm I held him. Not with physical strength, but with the steadfast light of my spirit. Remember, I whispered into our shared space. Remember the first bond, not of dominance, but of pact, the pack in the land, promising to protect each other. From him I drew a new memory, not of his making, but of his deepest, most buried longing. The image of a strong, united pack, howling not in conquest, but in joyous harmony under a healthy moon. The longing of a true alpha for his people's wholeness. We combined them, my ancient memory of the pact, his pure longing for unity. We forged a new seed, not from forest song and starlight alone, but from alpha resolve and starkled vision. Together, we pushed this combined light into the heartstone. For a moment the gray fought back, a final, desperate surge. Then, with a sound like a million shattering mirrors, the clouded veins shattered. A light erupted from the heartstone, not my silver, not Kaelin's blue, but a brilliant, golden-white radiance that filled the cavern, scouring every shadow. The remaining sentinels vanished with silent shrieks. The oppressive sorrow lifted, replaced by a profound, cleansing peace. The heartstone shone, its interior a swirling galaxy of healthy light. The connection between us broke as we slumped back, exhausted, our hands falling from the now warm crystal. We were both on our knees, breathing as one. He turned to look at me. There were no icy walls in his eyes now, only awe, humility, and a dawning, terrifying wonder. He reached out, his fingers trembling slightly, and brushed a strand of sweat-dampened hair from my face. The touch was feather-light, reverent. "Ilara," he breathed, my name a prayer on his lips. "What have we done?" But before I could answer, a tremor ran through the mountain, not from the heartstone, but from above, from the territory. The healing had begun, but the shockwave of purified energy rippling out from the core would be felt by everyone, and not everyone would welcome the dawn. The golden light from the heartstone faded to a gentle, steady glow, but the energy it had released was still coursing through the mountain, a seismic wave of cleansing power. The very stone beneath us hummed with renewed life. But the peace in the cavern was fragile, shattered by the echoing tremor from above. Kaelin was on his feet in an instant, the alpha surging back to the fore, though his eyes, when they met mine, held a new complexity. The raw wonder was still there, but it was now overlaid with the sharp focus of a commander assessing a threat. "The energy pulse," he said, his voice back to its commanding timbre but softer around the edges. "The entire pack will have felt it. They will be confused, afraid." "And Rykar," he grimaced. "Rykar and those loyal to the old ways will see it as an attack, a destabilization." He was right. The healing of the land would feel like an earthquake to those who had grown accustomed to the sickness, to the harsh, simple clarity of unquestioned strength. My newfound connection to the territory sang a warning. The energy wave was indeed causing ripples of panic and aggression at the surface. "We must get to the Great Hall," I said, pushing myself up. My body ached, but a fresh, clean power from the healed heartstone sustained me. "You must address them as alpha, but the words, they can't be the old words." He nodded, already moving toward the tunnel. "They must be true words." He paused, looking back at me, a struggle visible on his face. "You must be with me. They saw me take you. They will need to see us together, but it will make you a target. The change will be blamed on you." I understood. I would be the visible symbol of the upheaval, the foreign element that had corrupted their king. The safest path for him would be to denounce me, to claim he had purged the witch after all. But he wasn't even considering it. That, more than anything, told me how profoundly he had changed. "I am already a target," I replied, squaring my shoulders. "Let them see the target standing beside their alpha. Let them wonder what that means." A ghost of his old, fierce smile touched his lips. "So be it." We emerged from his den to a scene of controlled chaos. warriors were gathered in tense clusters, whispers died as we appeared. Every eye locked onto us, onto Kalen, whole and radiating a new, calm authority, and onto me, walking at his side, not behind him. The air was thick with confusion and the fading echoes of the blight's decay, now being overwritten by the clean, mountain-fresh energy from below. Rykar shouldered his way to the front, his face a storm. "Alpha, the mountain shook. What sorcery did she complete? Are you under her thrall?" The old Kalen would have eviscerated him for the implied weakness. The new Kalen simply held up a hand, and the gesture carried such immense, quiet power that the entire hall fell silent. "There is no thrall, Rykar, only clarity bought at a great price." His voice carried to every corner. "For moons we have been sick. Our land graying, our spirit straining. We called it a plague, a mystery. It was a mirror." He paused, letting his gaze sweep over his pack, making contact with she-wolves, elders, warriors. "The blight fed on our divisions, on the strength we discarded because it looked gentle. On the traditions we called weak, on the hearts we broke and left to blade into the soil." A murmur ran through the crowd. He was speaking heresy, but it was heresy that resonated with their hidden aches. "I led us into this sickness. My vision of strength was a wall, and I walled us in with a slow death." The admission, so blunt, so public, sent a shockwave through the pack. An alpha admitting fault was unheard of. "The cure was not found in sharper claws," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "It was found in remembrance, in a connection to this land that we had severed." He gestured to me. "Ilara, whom I cast out for her perceived weakness, carried that connection. She is Starkled, a bridge to the old ways, the true ways. Together we have healed the Heartstone. The mountain trembles because it remembers what it is to be alive." The word Starkled rippled through the crowd with awe and suspicion. Rykar's face was purple with rage. "So you abandon the law of the Fang for fairy tales and a glow? She is an Omega." Kalen's eyes flashed, but not with anger at the challenge, with pity. "She is the reason you still have a territory to defend, Rykar. Last night, while you stood guard, she held back the Shadowkin at the eastern border with light alone. She walked into the heart of the blight to heal it. That is not Omega weakness. That is a strength our legends have forgotten to name." He took a step forward, his presence expanding to fill the hall. "The law of the Fang is not abolished, it is balanced. From this day our strength will be judged not only by who we can dominate, but by what we can protect. Not only by the enemies we defeat, but by the allies we nurture. This is the new pact, with the land and with each other." He turned to me, and in front of everyone, he gave a slow, deep nod of respect, the kind given to an equal. "Ilara Starkled will have a voice on my council. Her wisdom will guide us back to wholeness." The reaction was explosive. Some, mostly the elders and the often overlooked she-wolves, looked hopeful, tears in their eyes. Others, the warriors like Rykar, looked betrayed, furious. The pack was dividing along a fracture line that had just been exposed. Rykar spat on the ground. "This is not the Frostfang way. You shame your father's memory. If you will not purge this corruption, then perhaps a true alpha will." He turned, gesturing to a solid third of the warriors. "Those who remember what we are with me." They began to back away, a solid block of dissent, civil war. It was here, Kalen's face was a mask of pained resolve. He would not force them to stay. That was the old way. But as Rykar and his rebels reached the great hall's entrance, a new sound echoed from outside, not a howl of defiance, but a unified, chilling howl of invasion. It was a sound that spoke of raw, uncomplicated hunger. It was not from Frostfang. The Blight's physical guardians were gone. But its final, desperate weapon had arrived. A rival pack, drawn by the territory's apparent sickness and now its shocking surge of energy, was at the gates. And they were led by a Lycan who made even Kalen's giant form seem merely tall. The chilling invasion howl sliced through the internal tensions like a blade. Rykar and his rebels froze at the entrance, their anger instantly tempered by a deeper, older instinct, pack defense. The enemy was at the wall. All eyes in the great hall swiveled from the dissenters back to Kalen. In that crucible of a moment, the fate of Frostfang hung in the balance. Would the Alpha prioritize the external threat and let the rebels walk, or would he fracture the pack completely by trying to stop them? Kalen's choice was immediate, instinctive, and masterful. He did not look at Rykar. He looked past him through the open doors as if he could see the invading force on the wind. His voice boomed not in anger but in a clear, rallying command that brooked no argument. Frostfang to the western ridge now. Every warrior, every wolf who can hold a line. He finally locked eyes with Rykar, and his gaze was not one of challenge but of grim offering. You wish to prove what a true alpha is, Rykar? Prove it now, on the wall. Defend the pups, the elders, the she-wolves you deem too weak for your new world. Defend them with me. It was a brilliant move. He reframed the rebellion not as a fight over philosophy, but as a test of the core duty they all shared. He gave Rykar a path back that didn't require submission, only action. Rykar's jaw worked, conflict raging in his eyes. The invading howls grew closer, more numerous. With a guttural snarl that seemed directed at the universe itself, Rykar turned to his warriors. You heard him, to the western ridge. For Frostfang, the two factions, moments from schism, streamed out of the hall together, united by a common enemy. Kalen moved to follow, but I caught his arm. He looked down, surprised. Kalen, wait. Ilara, there is no time for counsel. They are here. I know, I said, my mind racing, connected to the land's new, clear song. But this is no coincidence. The rival pack, the Ironjaw, they didn't just sense weakness. The Blight called them. It was a beacon of rot. Now that beacon is gone, replaced by a surge of pure energy. They're not attacking a sick pack. They're trying to claim a suddenly revitalized prize. They will be confused, reckless. He saw my point instantly. A strength they don't understand. How do we use it? Don't just meet them on the ridge, I said, ideas forming as I spoke to the wind, to the stones. The land is awake now. It will fight for us if we ask, not to kill, to hinder, to confuse. Let me go to the high ground. Let me speak to it. He hesitated, the Alpha's protective instinct warring with the strategist's mind. Letting me go alone into a battle zone. I will have your back, a gruff voice said. We turned. It was Lyra, the young she-wolf I'd seen beaten in the training grounds. She stood straighter now, a fierce light in her eyes. I may not be the strongest alpha, but I am fast and I believe in her. Kalen searched her face, then mine. He gave a sharp nod. Go, do what only you can do. Lyra, her life for yours. On my honor, Lyra pledged. We took a different path, a hidden trail known to Omegas and hunters, while the main force rallied at the ridge. From a high promontory overlooking the approach, I saw them. The Ironjaw pack was a tide of rusty brown fur and crude iron armor, a stark contrast to Frostfang's sleek gray and blue. Their alpha gar was a monstrous lycan, all brute muscle and scar tissue, leading the charge up the rocky slope toward our defensive line. Kalen stood at the forefront, a bastion of calm power, Rykar unbelievably at his right flank. The two alphas locked eyes across the distance, calculus versus chaos. I closed my eyes, sinking my consciousness into the ridge. I didn't command, I remembered for it. I sent images of deep roots gripping stone, of the mountain's own steadfast patience. I poured the starlight's clarity into the earth, asking it to remember its true, stable nature. The ridge responded. As the Ironjaw vanguard hit a certain point, the solid ground beneath their paws turned into shifting gravel. Not a chasm, but a sudden, unpredictable slide that broke their charge into stumbling, confused clusters. Gar roared in fury, digging his claws in. Next, I spoke to the wind, asking it to remember the playful, twisting gusts of the high passes. A sudden, capricious gale whipped down, not strong enough to push them over, but enough to blind them with dust and disrupt their howled orders, carrying our own commands clearly to our lines. Kalen saw the opportunity. He didn't order a full charge, he ordered precision strikes. Small, swift units of our warriors, including Lyra's friends who had been overlooked, darted in, using the terrain and confusion to harry the flanks, cutting stragglers off from the main body, then melting back into the rocks. It was a new kind of warfare, using the land as a partner. Rykar fought like a demon, but I saw him glance up at my promontory more than once, a grudging understanding dawning on his bloody face. This was the strength he couldn't quantify. Gar, enraged and bewildered, focused all his fury on Kaelin, hiding behind Trix Frostfang. "Fight me like a true alpha," Kaelin stepped forward, meeting him in the center of the chaotic field. "I am," Kaelin said, his voice carrying. "A true alpha fights with the strength of his entire pack and his entire territory." Their clash was titanic, but Kaelin was different. He wasn't just brute force anymore. He moved with a fluid efficiency, using Gar's own reckless rage against him, parrying blows with minimal effort, his energy sustained by the clean pulse of the healed land beneath his feet. He fought not to destroy, but to exhaust, to prove a point. Finally, with a mighty heave, he pinned Gar, not with a killing bite, but with his sheer weight and will. "Your pack is broken, Gar. Leave. Tell the others Frostfang is not weak. We are awake, and we are protected." The fight left Gar. The message was sent. As the humiliated Ironjaw retreated, a new howl rose from the Frostfang line. It wasn't a howl of victory, but of unity, of a pack rediscovering its soul. Rykar walked up to Kaelin, covered in grime but standing straight. He didn't bow. He met his alpha's eyes and gave the same respectful nod Kaelin had given me. Then he looked up at my perch and did the same. The rebellion was over, forged not in surrender but in the shared defense of a home that was now truly worth defending. In the days that followed the Ironjaw retreat, Frostfang territory didn't just feel different, it sounded different. The wind carried the scent of clean snow and thriving pine, not the brittle, metallic anxiety of before. The howls that echoed against the peaks were fuller, harmonizing with the new, gentle hum of the land itself. The great hall, once a chamber of cold judgment, was now alive with quiet, purposeful activity. I stood at the edge of it all, near the newly cleansed Moon Grove, watching the pack I had once fled rebuild itself from the inside out. Kaelin was true to his word. My place on his council wasn't a symbolic seat in the shadows. It was a stool right beside his massive alpha's chair. The first meeting had been tense. The elder warriors, their worldview shaken, eyed me with a mix of awe and deep suspicion. Rykar sat with his arms crossed, a permanent scowl etched on his face, but he listened. He actually listened. The topic was the redistribution of duties. "We cannot measure strength by the training grounds alone," Kaelin stated, his voice leaving no room for debate. "Lyra's unit used speed and knowledge of the hidden trails to turn the battle. That is a strength. Ilara's connection to the land is our greatest defense. That is a strength. We will find the role for every wolf that wishes to serve." I spoke then, my voice softer but clear in the hall. "The land has needs too, not just protection but care. The spirit spring in the forest needs tending. The howling caves need their echoes cleared of old grief. These are not omega tasks, they are honors, they are the pack's conversation with its home." To my surprise, it was Rykar who grunted in agreement. "Makes sense. A warrior fights better on ground he knows loves him." It was the closest to poetry I'd ever heard from him. The council began to see the territory not as property, but as a partner. Patrols were no longer just about borders, but about observing the health of streams and groves. Young wolves were taught not just to fight, but to identify healing herbs and listen to the weather song in the rocks. Kaelin and I fell into a new rhythm. We spent hours together, not in the intensity of crisis, but in the deliberate work of creation. We walked the borders, him sensing threats through his alpha bond, me feeling the land's vitality through my starkled connection. We were two lenses focusing on the same truth, and the picture that emerged was one of resilient, growing health. One evening, we stood on the western ridge where the battle had been fought. tiny wildflowers were already pushing through the churned earth. "It shouldn't have taken a war and a blight to see you," he said quietly, his gaze on the horizon. The setting sun painted his profile in gold and shadow. "I looked at you and saw only the absence of what I valued. I was blind to the presence of something essential. I didn't know what to say. The hurt of that rejection was a scar, but it was no longer a bleeding wound. It was a reminder. You weren't alone," I offered. The whole pack had forgotten the old songs. He turned to me, his icy eyes now the color of a thawing sky. "But you remembered, you held the memory for all of us. How does a pack repay that debt?" "By living the memory," I said simply, "by howling the songs. That is repayment enough." He was silent for a long moment, then he did something that stole my breath. He reached out very slowly and took my hand, not in a grip of possession or a jolt of accidental contact. He simply held it, his large, calloused fingers enveloping mine with a warmth that had nothing to do with physical heat. It was the warmth of acknowledgement, of shared purpose, of a bond being consciously, carefully forged. "Then live it with me, Alara," he said, his voice thick with an emotion that made my heart stutter. Not as an alpha commanding his subject, not even as a counselor advising her king, but as partners, you for the land and the stars. Me for the pack and its people, two halves of the same promise. It wasn't a declaration of love in the human sense, it was something deeper, more primal, more profound, a recognition of soul-deep compatibility. A Lycan king and a starkled healer, bound not by law or force, but by a mutual vow to a home they had both saved. I looked at our joined hands, then up at his face, seeing not the giant who had rejected me, but the leader who had learned to bend, the man who had found humility. I saw my future. I squeezed his hand. "I will," I promised. And in that moment, under a sky bleeding from orange to violet, with the healthy land sighing contentedly beneath our feet, it felt like the most sacred vow either of us would ever make. The past was forgiven, not forgotten. The present was a foundation we were building together. And the future was a howl waiting to be sung. A full cycle of the moon has passed since the healing of the Heartstone. Frostfang territory is no longer just a name on a map, it is a living testament to balance. The once blighted borders now bloom with resilient life, the gray woods now a mosaic of green and silver. The pack's howls are no longer just signals or challenges, they are harmonies woven into the mountain's own windsong. My place here is no longer a question. I am Alara Starkled, the healer, the Alpha's honored partner. The title Omega is a relic, spoken only in old stories as a lesson in the folly of judgment. Kaelin and I rule from a united front. My council seat is permanent and my voice carries the weight of the land itself. Together, we drafted the new codes, the pact of root and fang. Strength is still valued, but it is defined by what one can nurture and protect as much as what one can defeat. The training grounds now echo with lessons in tracking, herb lore, and even the quiet art of listening to the territory's mood. Rykar, to everyone's astonishment, has become the champion of this new way. He leads the combined patrols, warriors and land tenders with a fierce pride, understanding now that his strength is amplified by the health of the ground he defends. Lyra heads a new scout division, her speed and cleverness celebrated as the assets they always were. Today is the first ceremony of the renewed moon grove. The glowing stones are brilliant, their light pure and unwavering. The entire pack is gathered, not out of forced duty, but in eager participation. Kaelin stands at the center, dressed not in war regalia, but in a simple tunic of gray and blue, a mantle of living wolfbane flowers across his shoulders, a gift from the forest, mediated through me. I stand beside him in a gown the color of midnight strewn with silver threads like captured starlight. We are a picture of contrasted harmony, his grounded, mountain-like solidity beside my ethereal, celestial light. The elder, her voice strong with emotion, leads the rite of binding, the ritual Kaelin once scorned. As she chants the old words, Kaelin and I step forward to the central altar. This time, it is not a desperate, joint fight for survival, it is a conscious, joyful act of union. He places his hand on the stone, channeling his alpha bond, the connection to every beating heart in the pack. I place mine over his, channeling my starkled gift, the connection to every root, stream, and stone in the territory. Our energies meet, not in a clash, but in a seamless blend. The pack's vitality and the land's spirit intertwine, visible as a soft, golden light that rises from the stone and washes over every wolf present. A collective sigh of profound belonging rises from the crowd. The rite is complete, the pact is renewed. As the ceremony dissolves into quiet celebration, Kaelin and I walk away from the grove toward a quiet overlook. The two moons, one silver, one a faint blue, hang in the clear sky. Do you ever think of it? He asks softly, his shoulder brushing mine. The moment in the hall, I know exactly which moment he means. The cold voice, the crushing words, the end of my old life. I used to dream of it, I admit. Now I see it as the first harsh step on the path that led us here. If you had not rejected the weak Omega, the Starkled might have slept forever, the Blight would have won. He stops walking, turning to face me. The moonlight softens the hard lines of his face. Then I cannot regret the action, he says, his voice rough. But I will spend my life regretting the pain it caused and honoring the strength it revealed. He doesn't kiss me, that is not our way. The bond between us is too vast, too sacred for simple physical expression. Instead, he rests his forehead gently against mine, a Lycan sign of ultimate trust, of souls touching. We breathe the same air, share the same space, our unique auras, alpha resolve and starlight memory mingling into a single peaceful frequency. My partner, he whispers, my healer. My alpha, I whisper back. My reminder, in the distance the pack begins a new howl. It starts low, a rumble from the elders, then rises, taken up by the warriors, the scouts, the caregivers, the pups. It is a complex, beautiful song of many parts, each unique, all essential. It is the sound of a pack whole, it is the sound of our future. Kaelin lifts his head and together we add our voices to the chorus. His is a deep, resonant note of protection and promise. Mine is a clear, silvery thread of memory and hope. Our combined howl rises to the moons, a vow etched not in stone, but in the very heartbeat of the thriving land below. The Giant Lycan King had rejected a weak Omega, and in that moment of ultimate failure, he had unknowingly planted the seed for his pack's greatest salvation. And I, the one cast out, had finally come home, not to a place but to a purpose and to a partnership that would echo in the legends for generations to come. The story of teeth and titles was over. The song of root and fang had just begun.